Hello and welcome to another edition of Razorwire. Now today we're going to be carrying on with our interview piece where we bring on people who are well known around the InfoSec community to get their thoughts on where InfoSec is, where it's going, as well as kind of their journey through that InfoSec, how they got in and so on and so forth. So it should be a good amount of information for anybody wanting to understand anything about the industry or how to get into it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Ventura MBE. Hello, Lisa. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. So just for all of those out there watching, do you want to kind of give a brief introduction of who you are, what it is you do, your specialisms, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So my name is Lisa. I work very much in the cybersecurity space as a consultant, and a lot of what my work is and what I do is centered around cybersecurity awareness and culture change. But I'm also the founder of Cybersecurity Unity, and the original name for it was the UK Cybersecurity Association. And it was the UK's first trade body that was solely dedicated to cyber security, where there are obviously other bodies like the BCS and CSEC, etc., that do amazing, amazing work. And I'm a part of all of that and what they do. UK Cybersecurity Association was purely focused on cybersecurity, whereas others are focused on other areas of computing, tech, and information security.
Fantastic. You also have an MBE, don't you?
I do. I do indeed. And a funny little story around that, which some of your listeners might appreciate. So I got awarded my MBE in King Charles III's birthday honours list last year. And I received a letter from the Cabinet Office mid-May last year telling me about it. And when I first looked at it, my very first thought was, this is some kind of scam. It absolutely has to be. So I had a look, but there's a phone number at the top of the letter. So I looked at the phone and I thought, well, I'll give the number a call, but I'll withhold my number and be ready to disconnect if it doesn't sound quite right. So I found the number, withheld mine. And it was answered by a really lovely lady. And just from the sound of her, I just thought, oh, my goodness, this could actually be real. And she confirmed it was. And we had a bit of a chat. And she also said that I wasn't the only one to phone to ask whether it was genuine or not. And then when my husband got home from work, I told him I could not tell anybody else, but I did show the letter to him and swore him to absolute secrecy. And when I did tell him, he sort of looked at the paper, and when he got past all the congratulations and so on, he said, "You should have known that was genuine." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Just look at the quality of that paper. That has been that is taxpayers' money that's gone into that paper." I said, "You don't know." I said, "They will go to any and all lengths to catch you out." I said, so yeah, I'm still glad I did what I did and did some diligence around checking it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. It's only cybersecurity people who sit there and look at a letter like that and go, "How am I being scammed?"
Exactly.
This is it. Our radar is always up, and we're always on the lookout. But I mean, do you want to kind of let people know? I mean, how did you get into InfoSec? I mean, when we kind of pull back to a young you out in the sort of job market. I mean, where did you originally come from? Did you go to university? What did you was it info? Obviously, I take it wasn't InfoSec because that's a relatively new degree in comparison.
Absolutely. So no, my background was I actually wanted to go into journalism. So from as far back as I can remember, I was always happiest when I had a pen and paper and I'm writing things. I wasn't really too bothered with toys or whatever, too much until I got a Scale Electric at 5 years old. And then that got my interest in Formula One and cars going. But that's a whole other story. But no, I wanted to go into journalism as an original career choice. But back when I left school, that meant moving to London. So I went on to do my A levels, and then I did English and Literary studies E level. But it meant moving to London, and I just could not move to London for love nor money. It just didn't sort of thrill me to have to sort of move there and work there and so on. Very different to today, because of course back then email was only just coming to the forefront, as was the internet. But of course, today I could write, and I do write from absolutely anywhere, as long as I've got my my device and connection. It really doesn't matter. But that wasn't the case back then. So I moved very much more into the entertainment industry, and as chance would have it, I ended up working at Chris Tarrant's management company. So as in Chris Tarrant of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fame. And I worked with Chris for a number of years, and I got to see Millionaire go from a format on A4 paper with a working title of Cash Mountain and it was the global phenomenon that it became when it was syndicated all over the world. And I did that for a number of years. And yes, I was there on the night of the infamous coughing incident with Major Charles Ingram. But again, that's a whole other story as well. So I got into cyber because around about 2009, I felt I got about as far as I could with working with Chris. And I did fancy some sort of a change, and I really wasn't sure what. But my ex at that time was really high up as a penetration tester and did a lot of high profile government work, but could never tell me an awful lot about it due to the Official Secrets Act. But I was always really fascinated around hacking, and aside from the monetary side of things, why they do it, what the psychology of hacking, why people fall for those for those scams. And so I joined Titania Limited, which is the company that my ex founded when they created a tool called Nipper Studio that scans routers, networks, and firewalls and looks at the configuration files within. So I got involved really early on with that, and the company was actually founded in this very room I'm sat in now. Grew to a thriving SME with over 25 odd members of staff, offices in the centre of Worcester, and so on. And I got involved in the cybersecurity strategy for Worcestershire. I was also a founder member of the first cyber cluster in the UK, which was the Malvern cyber cluster, which is now Midland Cyber. And of course, you have a whole network of cyber clusters throughout the UK that's managed by UKC3. And then when my ex and I separated and subsequently divorced, I knew that I wanted to stay within cybersecurity. So I went to work at BT and worked on their Assure Cyber product, which at the time was a potential competitor to Nipper Studio. I then moved into doing a lot more cybersecurity awareness and security culture change work. And I've worked with Pinsent Mason Solicitors, Boost Technology Group, Cyborn. I've currently doing that with Qualitest at the moment, as well as founding the UK Cybersecurity Association as that first trade body for cybersecurity, which is now called Cybersecurity Unity. So I didn't start out to go into cyber. I will admit I'm one of the first to say that I kind of fell into it through circumstance, but now I'm in it. I can't imagine doing anything else.
It is crazy. I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of people who've been in this space for a while. And I mean, the way people get in nowadays is very different. You've got university courses specific to InfoSec. You've got tracks to get into it. You still get quite a few IT people shifting over to it now, but we're starting to see a hell of a lot of different disciplines coming in, which is really good. Seeing a hell of a lot of lawyers now becoming specifically targeted at cyber law and cyber criminal law and working in that space. And it's really, really nice because, back in the 90s, late 90s, when the internet was just starting to become a big thing, the dot-com bubble was just starting to heat up, and what have you.
Yeah.
It was a bit Wild West, wasn't it? I mean, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
And I remember that time really well, and the Y2K bug and the whole
Yeah.
.com boom and all. I've like yourself, I've lived through all of that, and yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, a lot of people don't understand the power. A lot of the younger generation of InfoSec people don't understand the power of fear, uncertainty, and doubt because they weren't there during the 2K rigmarole. And it was a rigmarole because there was a lot of people spending a ton of money on a potential. And, when I think there was like one factory somewhere out in some part of Eastern Europe fell over and, maybe a couple of other things, people's computers fell over and nothing happened. It really kind of damaged the IT industry quite significantly, I think, because I think a lot of business owners looked at it and went, well, you scared the hell out of all of us and we spent all this money and nothing happened, And I think, from a security standpoint, that's why maybe shortly afterwards, information security or cyber or IT security, has been through a number of different names, hasn't it? Became quite difficult as something to discuss with business owners and boardrooms. It was quite tough. They always considered it part of IT. Governance was still quite early back then as well for a lot of us. I mean, what was your experience in that kind of 2K, post-2K, post-bubble? Because that obviously didn't help either, let's be honest.
No, absolutely. And funnily enough, I was having this particular chat to my husband the other week. We were talking about that whole time, that whole Y2K thing. And we think probably not so much the younger generation, but particularly our generation. I think those that don't understand cybersecurity and the cybersecurity threat, they're probably a bit more reticent to get on board with cyber because of that whole thing of, well, nothing happened then, so why is it's not going to happen to us now? And I think there is that kind of, correlation, like you say, that whole fear, uncertainty, doubt, that FUD that we all experienced. And I think that has had an impact on particularly our generation. And I still talk to a lot of business owners, particularly the smaller business owners, the sole traders, even some SMEs as well, that are led by people around our age, and they just don't get that they need to take cybersecurity seriously. And they don't think about their cyber posture, and they have a very much head in the sand approach, and they'll often go, well, we're too small. We're not going to get attacked. A hacker's not going to bother with us. So we don't need to bother with cyber. One, totally untrue. Size does not matter. And secondly, let's assume, just for 1 second, let's assume that is true. We know it's not, but let's assume it is. What about your supply chains? What about your customers, your clients? How can you be sure that their cyber posture is such that you won't get impacted should they suffer a breach? And that's still a big message, I think, that we've yet as an industry, as a whole, to crack.
Your specialization within cybersecurity nowadays is very, very interesting. And I think it's very interesting to a lot of people who are maybe looking to get into InfoSec at the moment, or people who are in their early stage of their career, because you deal quite significantly with the kind of, the some mental health stuff, the psychology, and so on and so forth. And we've had Yanya and Eve, who's talked about burnout and stuff. And it was something I wanted to ask you because, InfoSec has always been stressful. It's always been a pretty stressful thing. When you're not being listened to in the early days, that was stressful. And nowadays, you face the real fear that if you're not doing what you consider to be the right thing, and you're not getting the budget to do the right thing, you could still get finger pointed in the event of an event as you not doing your job properly, which has a massive, horrible effect on us. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome in this space. Is there something you can kind of go over there about, your specialism, what you're finding at the moment, and what your thoughts are on that?
Absolutely. So as you rightly said, Jim, I talk a lot about the importance of looking after your mental health, burnout, and why there's a lot of burnout and problems with mental health within cybersec. And I think imposter syndrome as well is really rife. I've had a significant amount of imposter syndrome, and it's actually something that I talk about a lot. And not only that, I actually co-founded an awareness day dedicated to opening up the conversation around imposter syndrome, and that takes place on 13th of April every year. For me, I can directly correlate my vast amounts of imposter syndrome, and believe me, it is always there. Everything I do, those voices are in my head all the time of, I'm a complete fake, a fraud, and I'm going to be found out any second, or I shouldn't be doing this. And particularly, I had it around launching the association. Nobody else at the time, quite a few years ago, seemed to be doing this. And I really wanted to get it out there. And I kept holding back. I kept stopping because I had this voice in my head of, I'm not qualified. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm a complete fraud in this industry. I have no right to get this association, out there and off the ground. So it's always been there. And for me, there's a correlation with two things. One is that for full disclosure, I'm neurodivergent. And I talk a lot as well about people being neurodivergent, neurodiversity, reasonable adjustments, and so on. And I have autism and ADHD, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia. So that's a big correlation, because I think those that are neurodivergent do suffer a bit of a higher degree of imposter syndrome. But on top of that as well, I've also been subjected to some significant, and I do mean significant, bullying and abuse throughout my lifetime. Not just in cybersecurity and InfoSec, I've had it in every single area of my life from a very, very young age. And so those things that I was told from that young age, or that bullying, that teasing, those things that were said to me, they're still there. I heard them even before I walked through the school gates, but those things are still there. And looking at it now, I can see that those that delivered that bullying and abuse were very narcissistic individuals and had a very high level of narcissistic personality disorder traits, if not full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And I became quite a people pleaser as a result of that as well. So there's always been that sort of, tug of war, if you like, between the imposter syndrome, but also wanting to prove these bullies and abusers in my life from that very young age completely wrong. And it has had a massive impact. So it's an area that I do a lot of work and research and I talk about, quite openly as well, because I don't think people, and those that are narcissists, just don't have any clue how they're impacting other people. They don't see that they're doing anything wrong. They think that they are right 100% of the time, and that it's everybody else that's at fault, not them. They have such a grandiose image of them that themselves, if they're from the grandiose narcissism side, or if they're very much from the covert side, they have a massive victim mentality. They just really have to have the attention on them all the time, and everything goes wrong for them. They can't understand why people aren't speaking to them anymore, or they're the biggest victim, or everything just happens to them, and they're draining. They are absolutely and utterly draining. You can go into a conversation with one in full color and come out completely black and white within no time at all.
I've experienced a fair bit of that myself, I'll be honest. And in the early days, it was very much outside the InfoSec industry, because I think a lot of people in those early days experienced that kind of thing. Nobody wanted to know about InfoSec. It wasn't on people's radar, and I get why it wasn't. But there was you tended to get that a lot more from the people that you worked with if you were working for an organization. The IT teams they're there to do their job. They want to keep things running. They don't want to concern themselves about security, and I get it a lot. I still get it now, even, dare I say it, sorry if my missus is watching that, but she sometimes say, "Oh, you're so pessimistic when you're looking at things." I'm like, no, I'm not pessimistic. I'm realistic. I'm analyzing this from from a risk management point of view, I think a lot of InfoSec people get hard with that, and I think very unfairly. But there is, as you say, a flip side. And I think as InfoSec got more and more popular, route to take for people coming into the industry, for people looking for a career, we have had the big narcissists start to really creep in. I mean, is that kind of in line with what you're seeing, or am I talking?
You're absolutely spot on there. And it's so funny you talking about that. I have similar conversations with my husband as well. And he always has the worst case scenario and a plan A, B, C, D, and even E, for pretty much everything. And yes, I've been targeted by some very narcissistic individuals in our industry. And throughout my lifetime, I can actually see that really clearly now. And interestingly as well, from some women in the industry who should also know better, because they talk about the diversity and inclusion element and bang the drum about how we need more support for women in the industry, how we need more women in the industry. And yet I've been absolutely viciously targeted by some of them. And they are hiding in plain sight out there. And then I look at some of the stuff that they'll put out on LinkedIn or whatever, to championing diversity and inclusion. And I just think, how can you do that when you've just been so utterly vile, to me and to others? It just beggars belief.
Yeah, because I mean, are you seeing that from other people that you speak to? Because I mean, you speak to way more people than I do on a regular basis. Is this something that's becoming a bit of a problem in the industry with those newcomers coming in? Are they coming in and going, "Ow, what's going on here? I just want to do InfoSec. Why am I?" why am I being subjected to this? Because I mean, there's always been the reports that, a lot of CEOs around the world, you kind of have to be a bit vicious and, and there's a lot of psychos. I should use the word psychos, but there's people with certain neurological conditions that seem to gravitate towards those types of roles. And I've had my fair experience, fair amount of experience with narcissists as well. But is it affecting that new incoming younger group?
I think in some ways it is. And I see a lot of excitement from young people about, the ones that do come in, about joining the industry. And when they first get there, they're really excited. They want to make a positive difference in what they're doing. And I saw firsthand a couple of years ago at an organization I was with someone that is now working at the BCS. But when she joined, she was really enthusiastic, couldn't wait to make a difference. And I could literally see, I'm going back to the color analogy, I could literally see the color drain out of her because of this one individual in the organization that was just, and doing it to me as well, nitpicking of, this isn't right, that's not up to my standards, sort that out, do this, do that, micromanaging to the 8th degree. And this person was, really bubbly and really sort of, outspoken, enthusiastic. And I just saw that just drain as each call that we were on, where she just wouldn't speak up, wouldn't contribute, wouldn't say anything, because she'd had the lifeblood sucked out of her by this awful narcissistic individual. The other thing I see a lot, Jim, I don't know about you, is these are the individuals that will often get ahead and get promoted. And I would often in the past stop and think, how is this happened? But it's because they are master manipulators. They know how to charm people. They know how to pretend to be. In fact, they are the biggest imposters. That's the irony. The narcissists are the biggest imposters because they really are extremely fake and know what buttons to press and know how to manipulate others. And that's how I think they get ahead.
It is tough. I mean, people at our stage of our career, when we meet these people, it's relatively easy for us to deal with it. We've got our own backgrounds. you can kind of ignore them, or you can turn around, you can call them out on it, and it's easier for us. But for younger people just getting in, for people who are still unsure of themselves, because that's what happens in life. When you first start out in your profession, you're really unsure of how do I go with this? What do I need to learn? Where do I take it? And it's a big problem, I think, for the youngsters coming up, because you only learn as you get older and, with, dare I say it, with a bit more experience, to call people out on their I'm going to say it, bullshit. And when you finally do that, it surprises them, and they just sit there and kind of look at you incredulously. But I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, no, you're not actually.
Yeah.
And and if you do it in a certain way, and you've got other people who are there at the time, you can see the people around the room who've wanted to say that for so long start to sort of smile gently in the corner, because someone's actually sort of pulling them up on it. And I think it is a problem. And I think, one of the things we need to sort of train into the people that we mentor is how to deal with that. Not just kind of on the higher, nastier level, but how to deal with that imposter syndrome. And one of the other things I wanted to talk about, which seems to be a big hot topic that a lot of our videos where we talk about burnout really kicks in. Where are we with burnout in this industry from your perspective? I mean, we spoke to Eve and we spoke to Yanya about, what Yanya experienced and what Eve is seeing. What are you seeing as well? Is it the same kind of thing at the same kind of level? Oh, I'm seeing a lot of my peers properly burnt out. They still do it because they still need to earn the money, but the heart is not in it anymore. Is that something we need to start being really concerned about?
Absolutely, Jim. And that's a very fair reflection of what I'm also seeing. Really, really good people who are very passionate about what they do, who are extremely burnt out. And as you rightly say, they carry on doing it because they need to, earn the money to keep going and pay their bills and so on. But I think we're also losing a lot of good people from our industry. We talk a lot about the cyber skills gap, as I'm sure you know. But as much as we're trying to attract new people into the industry, we're also losing a lot of really good people, either because of bullying and abuse, either because of burnout or mental health problems. And I think a lot of it is that they have the responsibility for so much, that if there is an incident or if something goes wrong, and it does all kind of fall on them. And I think that's what they have to live with all the time, 24/7, that kind of, fear of, if something does, go wrong, that's going to fall on me. It's going to be because of, perhaps something I didn't do, or I didn't think to secure that bit or do that bit or put that solution in place or whatever it is. And of course, many CISOs and cybersecurity professionals are operating on much less budget as well than they once were, or impact of redundancies. You've probably seen yourself all the tech layoffs and redundancies and so on that have been occurring sort of post-pandemic. And I definitely saw in the pandemic there was a big push to hire more people, but now there's a big cost-saving exercise going on in a lot of organizations. And I think that's having a big impact on burnout and mental health as well.
Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of that. And funnily enough, going to a place like InfoSec, you get a chance to speak to people in a more personable setting, not in a kind of professional thing and, during Teams or whatever. And you can have a beer with them and say, how are things really going? And you just see them sigh. They kind of go, it is what it is. And I think a lot of people in the same situation are experiencing that. And I don't know how to fix that. I try to support the youngsters getting in as much as I can. And I say to them, look, you are going to get told that you don't know what you're talking about. You're going to get told that, you need to do this, you need to do that, and you're going to get micromanaged. You need to look past that and move into positions where people genuinely care. And if you do feel like you're feeling burnt out, just go back to your basics. Just go back to why you got in the first place. Move jobs, obviously, or look to move jobs if you are experiencing something horrible. And if all else fails, just call them out on it. People are more surprised when you call them out on it.
Yeah.
I've done it in meetings. I've had all kinds of situations over the years, which I'm not going to go into, but people, if you hit it head on, it's like the rest of InfoSec. You've got to hit InfoSec head on when you're doing your defense in depth, when you're looking at your risk factors, your probability factors. You can't just kind of ignore something and just hope that it's going to go away. It never bloody does.
Yeah.
So, when you're dealing with these people, seriously consider doing it in that way. I mean, what's the worst you're going to do? If you don't like the job anyway, you're going to be moving on.
Exactly
call them out on it.
And I've done that before in meetings where I've had, disparaging comments or things like that aimed at me by these narcissistic individuals. And I've just turned around and I've gone, did you mean to say that? Or did you mean to say that in quite that way? And it can be a really good disarming tool, because it puts them on the spot. And at that moment, they know then that you're onto them and that you figured them out and what they're doing. But if it gets too much, and I often get asked, how can we deal with narcissistic individuals in the workplace? And if it gets too much, I have only one bit of advice, and it's not a good bit of advice to say, and that is to find something new as soon as you possibly can and leave, because those individuals will never change. And as I said earlier, they'll never admit when they're wrong, and they will just cause havoc wherever they go. So that's the only bit of advice that I can give, is to just find something else, because I understand you've got to pay the bills. You can't just if up and leave. Find something else as soon as you possibly can, and get away from them. Go complete no contact. That's the only bit of advice that I can give.
Absolutely. There's always a different job. There's always somewhere else you can go. And people like that normally get called out. And, eventually people behind the scenes know what they're like. They may be polite to them in public setting, but a lot of people realize who those people are and try to pull away. Don't do what I did, just, put them into a narcissistic rage. I don't recommend that.
Oh my goodness, that's nuclear level. We talked about all things nuclear level, but if you've ever seen a narcissist have full-blown narcissistic rage, that can go beyond nuclear.
Yeah, and if you know what you're doing, you can actually do that really, really easily.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't look that
Yeah.
up. Just get out the situation. Trust me on that. I'm just a bit of an arse, really. But where do you see kind of the future of InfoSec going based on the trajectory we're going now? Let's move kind of into the general kind of InfoSec field.
I think to coin a phrase, I'm seeing it as almost a little bit of a reset, in that I mentioned earlier that during the pandemic, there was a huge rush to hire and a big focus on security. And now, like you say, that is contracting, but it's almost like a reset. But I think the threats are also getting a lot worse as well. That the threats certainly aren't going away. There's new ones every second of every day to keep on top of. And I think we're seeing a lot more in terms of attacks from nation states. I'm watching the election at the moment with interest in terms of deep fakes and things like that. And that's only going to get worse as we go, I think, into the American elections, later in the year and so on. And like you said, AI, when the reality is a lot of this AI stuff, I think, is very much just used for marketing products. I've now got this Samsung Galaxy S24 that's, AI powered and so on. And it's like, no, it's not. So it's got a little pen that can draw around and remove objects. That's not, to me, that's not AI, powered as
VC money. It's all about the VC money. You stick AI anywhere in it and boom, you've got your funding.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. I think do you think we're being more listened to now at the C-suite? It does seem to be occurring. I mean, we've got DORA, for instance, coming in next year, and there's I think there's going to be a whole swath of changes to legislation around InfoSec because of the state-sponsored stuff that we all know is happening. Nobody ever admits to it, but why would you, kind of thing, if you're a nation state? the attacks are getting more public and bigger as well. Cripes, every week I sit down with a coffee on a Monday and look at who's been done over the weekend or late on a Friday, and do you think it's gonna be more? I mean, it is nicer now to have the conversation about cybersecurity than it was 10 years ago. Do you think that's gonna continue? And are we going to see more CISOs on the C-suite rather than being under control of the IT department?
I would love to think so, Jim, because I think the CISO should rightfully have that seat on the boards, and I think it is starting to happen, albeit quite slowly. And boards are starting, no pun intended, to get on board with cybersecurity a lot more now. But that tends to be the bigger organizations. As I mentioned earlier, there's still the smaller ones, the sole traders, the smaller scale SMEs to think about as well. And as you rightly said, and I do the same, I sit down on a Monday and look at what's happened over the weekend in terms of data breaches. And yes, there are some quite high profile ones, and they're reported on all the time. What I would like to see is some smaller scale ones and more organizations being a bit more open to saying that it's happened, because I think that it's a case of not if, but when, for pretty much all organizations of all sizes. They're going to be impacted in some way by some sort of cyber attack at some point. And I would love to see more smaller organizations putting their heads above the parapet and saying, we've been hit, this has happened to us, to raise that much needed awareness of it happening to those smaller businesses. I can understand it from that reputational, standpoint perspective, that they are reticent to put their head above the parapet and say, we have been, attacked, or we have been breached. But I think it would go some way to getting more smaller businesses thinking about their cyber posture more seriously, because they look at and they just think, oh, it is the larger organizations of the world, not us. And that's why I would like to see more of the smaller organizations opening up when they have been breached.
Absolutely. I mean, InfoSec people are normally pretty good at talking when they get together, kind of thing, about what's happened, because we're all in it. And we all know it happens. But you're right, comms, when it comes to business people, I mean, it really annoys me when I read we take the security, security of our customer data, seriously after a massive breach. It's like, guys, just don't get the PR guys to come out and say that. Just help out. Give some info. I mean, not anything that's going to cause you, serious damage, but we need to get the message out, and we need to get the comms working, because we in order for us to be able to deal with this, it's not the InfoSec people, it's not just the InfoSec people who need to get involved. There's a lot of other cogs in any organization that need to be, on board. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Anyway, we're reaching the top of our time together. So I'm going to ask you the final question. The question I ask everybody: you've just gotten your first job in InfoSec. Maybe you sat there in a coffee shop or at the bar, and you've just had the call from the recruiter or from the person who the individual who's recruiting you, the organization that's recruiting you. And you step through the door as you are now, and you see yourself sat at the bar or at the coffee shop table with your coffee or your drink or gin and tonic, whatever it may well be. And you think, oh, I'm going to give myself a little bit of advice for the future. What would that advice be?
Definitely to try to avoid the narcissists in our industry, to look for the red flags as well, which is something that I was really bad at doing previously, was spotting those red flags and those things and personality traits that might make me think, okay, this individual isn't quite all what they seem. And you will encounter those bullies and abusers in the industry. I've encountered many of them, but do know that that the way that they behave towards you says absolutely nothing about you and everything about them. It's nothing you've done. It's nothing that you've caused. They are just the most destructive individuals who will stop at nothing to stamp out anything that they see in their way that they're jealous of. So never take it personally, because it's everything to do with them and nothing to do with you.
Very good advice. And for any of you out there watching this, as I've always said in my masterclasses, and I'm sure Lisa has said this many, many, many times, one really key factor when you start to learn in any job, it's not just InfoSec. Psychology is a really, really important skill to learn. You don't need to be a master at it. You don't need to go and get a degree in it, although, there's plenty of people who love that kind of thing and do that kind of thing. But being able to spot personality traits, being able to learn how to deal with those, and being able to kind of support not only your own mental health, but supporting the psychology of the people around you is really, really important. Because and I'm just going to kind of add to what Lisa said there, if somebody is doing this to you, they have done it to others.
Oh, yeah.
And it's more likely that those others are still around. They will know exactly what you're talking about, and don't feel that you're alone, because you really aren't. And if needs be, reach out to another InfoSec professional who you know is better than they are. It'll probably annoy the narcissist a lot more that you have. Lisa, it's been absolutely fantastic. We've spoken to you a couple of times. Can't wait to speak to you in the future. And for all of you out there, please feel free to look Lisa up. She's on LinkedIn. Is there any kind of other places they can go to find some of the stuff that you've done that you want to kind of plug?
Absolutely. So the Cybersecurity Unity website is csu.org.uk. I also have my own personal brand website, which is lisaventura.co.uk. And as you said, Jim, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, so Instagram, so all those main channels. And do reach out to me if you'd like to talk about any of the things that I've focused on in this podcast today. I'm always happy to have a chat with anybody. So do get in touch.
Fantastic. And to all of you out there, look, InfoSec is difficult enough as it is. Okay, don't make it difficult for yourself, and go and utilize the resources that Lisa has, and all the other guests as well. Because weirdly enough, the people at the top of the InfoSec community are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. Yeah, you've got to watch out for the problematic ones, but there's a lot of good people here who are more than happy to help you out. So, thank you ever so much, Lisa. And to everybody watching, look after yourselves as well, and we'll be speaking to you again soon. And thank you for listening or even watching the latest edition of Razorwire. It's always good to get feedback. Please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via LinkedIn or through our website, www.razorthorn.com. If you feel that there's something that we should cover maybe a little bit more in depth, a new topic, or something of interest to you or the community at large, we'll even do interviews. If you've got any recommendations or you want us to interview people, we'll reach out to those individuals and see if we can get them on camera, so we can ask them the important questions about InfoSec. So it'd be great to see what your feedback is. In addition, I do have a book recently come out, the Cyber Sentinels Handbook, a primer for information security professionals. Now, this book is very much geared up towards professionals at all levels of their career, be they starters, be they newcomers, be they people who've been in it for a little while and maybe looking for a little bit more direction, albeit the older ones looking to maybe reground themselves in some of the more important aspects of the trade that maybe they've forgotten over time. I've had lots of good feedback from a lot of different readers of lots of different levels, so please feel free to get yourselves a copy. We've got the e-copy, we've also got the paperback copy, and if you don't want to spend any money, you can go on Kindle Unlimited and read the book for free there as well. So thank you ever so much again. Look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.